Gentlemen and variations thereof, welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. My name is Rotten Deadite, and with me today are...
I am James, also known as Aramithius.
I'm Andrew, also known as the White Glor.
Hi, I'm Michael. You might know me as Scourgicus or Moon Sugar Leader.
And we got an email asking us to talk about the relationship and the sort of symbolism behind the Hortator and the Sharmat in Morrowind.
Good stuff.
But as we'll get into, that relationship between two characters can be extended and applied to a number of other games, including Skyrim and Oblivion, and etc. Because, well, let's start off with definitions first. So it's possible to sort of misconstrue let me get even more basic than that. Okay, so the Hortator and the Sharmat are two titles. The Hortator is a title given to the main character in Morrowind, and other characters historically in Morrowind's history, but given to the main character in Morrowind, and what it means, I think it's Greek or Latin, and it means it's basically given to a person who unites people together.
I did not know.
Yeah, and I think it was an award or a job or something in the government of someone in chat will know if it's Greek or Roman or whatever. That where the this is basically a person who's able to bring together political parties or groups together and unite them all in a sort of a general sense, and so you're awarded the title of Hortator in Morrowind by uniting the three houses in Morrowind together behind you and to pronounce you as Nerevarine, and basically all join together to endorse you in the war against Dagothar and etc. And the Sharmat is a title given to us by Dagothar. He calls himself the Sharmat. It's based on the, I want to say Sumerian word, or is it Assyrian?
One of those comes from
who invented chess? Whoever invented chess, those people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Persian.
Yeah, Persian. Thank you. And
that sounds right.
Yeah, it is a word that means the king is trapped, and currently what we say is checkmate. But that's what Sharmat means. It was the term used in the earliest versions of chess for, when...
I thought it was the king is dead.
Yeah, Shakumat.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
is
okay,
how
the king
you
is
get
dead.
to
All right.
checkmate from that.
Okay.
Or words to that effect.
Shakumat, yeah. Which sounds like it's being mispronounced by somebody in a thick Japanese accent. But Shakumatu. So when the... when Dagothar calls himself this is in sermon 9, 12, whatever, the good one, the one with the poetry in it.
Yeah, 11. 11, I think is.
It's 11.
Yeah. Or no, 11 is where it's talked about. I think the Black Hands of Mephala and the Hortator Sharmat 1-on-1. That's 11. Because
it's 15. I wanted to say it was 15, but 15. I wasn't sure because I thought I might be confusing 15 with 14, and so I was yeah, okay. But I'm right, anyway. It was 15. I should trust my gut more. This is only my job.
Yeah. and I should correct it. I should correct things. I've literally just looked it up. It is literally Sharmet, or that's how it's rendered in Roman characters for the king is dead in chess.
And why Dagothar calls himself this is up to personal interpretation. My personal interpretation is that he's talking about himself as the king, and he's saying that he's currently trapped in this sort of, non-existence state that he's in, and he's waiting for the Akulakan and the sixth house to sort of bring him back into reality, which is what you're seeing with the dreams and the Corpus Blight infestation and so on, is Dagothar coming from the realm of death, which is where Indoril Nerevar put him when he defeated him the first time, into the realm of into the actual physical realm. That's my personal suspicion, is that he's talking about himself there. He could be taking on the title as a person who traps kings. There's a lot of different interpretations. Does anybody else have any ideas?
His entire thing about, I mean, he has one line, I think, when you talk to him towards the end of the game, where he wants to use Numidium to conquer all of Tamriel.
Right.
And so, I mean, it could be in reference to that. Like, I am the one who kills kings. Because world domination is my jam.
It also, he was also proposing to install a theocratic type of government as well. Mm-hmm. So and it almost feels like, just from the vibe I get from him and the Dreamers, that it was kind of egalitarian in how they were sort of functioning.
Yeah. Because Dagoth doesn't want himself to be the god. That's the thing, or at least that's what he says. He wants.
But he says he is a god. How can you kill a god? What a grand and intoxicating innocence. Yeah.
He specifically says that he will be the high priest of Akula Khan or something like that. Like, it's all about Akula Khan in his mind, and his divinity is like a means to an end or something like that. Like that. That's kind of the vibe I get from his final speech.
And so it could also be that so it could be that he's calling himself the Sharmat, as in the person who traps kings or kills kings.
Ooh,
it's important that sorry,
Cyclone has a spicy take in chat that he's referencing the tribunal, as in I am the death of the tribunal, which
Absolutely,
is technically true.
Yeah, but it is important that it's very likely that he's at the very least. These could be more than one ways. These could all be. A lot of these could be valid, but that he refers to himself as a king is very likely because of the relationship between the metaphysical relationship between Dagoth and whoever will eventually defeat him. It's a fight among ruling kings. It's to decide who will be the ruling king in 36 Lessons terminology. It's the reason why they're both represented by ones, and why the number 11 is such an odd number, is because it's two towers, two kings opposing each other. And so it's so that lots and lots of symbolism there. It's probably even easier to I think we've had a whole cast about Dagoth before, where we've gone off on that kind of, so you can get an idea of like how I'm sort of backing away from the chasm of talking about Dagoth. And so, a popular theory which I enjoy hearing about, I'm not entirely sure I agree completely with it, but I do like the logic, is that these are titles that you can apply to opposing forces or opposing characters in either opposing forces in the enantiomorphic sense, or opposing characters in a conflict sort of sense. And that it's big, dude. That thing flew like really close to the camera, and it looked like you were being invaded by like a B movie.
I will try and get it, but no guarantees.
I think it's a
I
moth.
will mute myself whenever I try, though.
Okay. Well, we couldn't hear anything. It's fine. You're good. So just giant moth invasion in the UK right now.
Yeah.
And it's okay. We're having giant spider invasion here on the East Coast. Big parachuting spiders.
We will capture them, tame them, and make them into ships. Don't worry.
Yes, that's right. We'll build castles on their backs. So the idea of a the idea of these two being characters in an opposing story or an opposing force carries a lot of weight. People have frequently suggested that this could be a relationship that describes the conflict between the last Dragonborn and Miraak, the arguably first Dragonborn, in Skyrim. That Miraak is a trapped king in many ways because he is trapped by Hermaeus Mora in either in the relationship that they have, or in whatever weird dimension Mirak's actually in, and that he's reaching out to people in a dreamlike state, and taking over people's minds in the middle of the night and screwing up everybody's sleep schedule, which is just absolutely unforgivable. And I think that this was actually, I think it wasn't Ted, who was it? Was it Kurt Kuhlman, I think, who wrote the overall plot line for the Dragonborn expansion, and he said that it was intentionally supposed to be a nod in the direction of the Morrowind, Sharmat, Dagothur kind of idea of this entity, godlike being reaching out from another dimension, and that's. I think that's a really strong argument, actually. I think I mean, it is very easy to draw a lot of parallels between the plot of Dagothur and Morrowind and the plot of the Dragonborn expansion, but...
Well, I mean, even all the similarities between Mirak himself and Dagothur himself.
Like what?
The mask, the poem, the use of some kind of dream sort of telepathy to get others to join his team, as it were. I mean, there's a lot that we can point to draw similarities between Dagothur and Mirak. Absolutely. And I mean, it's led me
both
to
come back from times of old.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I am older than music, etc.
Yep.
Yeah, because Mirak has his own kind of poem. It's what everyone chants while they're working on his shrine.
Yeah.
But it's led me to the belief that Hermaeus Mora was involved behind the scenes in what happened in Morrowind.
Oh, you think?
I mean, yeah. I mean, look at Ascended Sleepers, for example. Don't they look a lot like Seekers? They sure do.
God.
Yeah.
I have not put that together. Yes, they do. Yeah.
Yes, they
I just
do.
assumed that they were playing their tentacles like bagpipes, but yeah, that's, yeah.
I mean, which is also dope, but it's I mean, it's one of those things where there's no real proof. I can't say here's a connection. Look at how amazing it fits. I mean, they're just more circumstantial.
I can't, to add to the pile of circumstantial evidence. One of the things that kind of rings in my ears is that Dagothur recapitulates the ancient sin of the Dwemer as far as the Tribunal Temple is concerned. That's wording straight from the plans to defeat Dagothur.
Recapitulates them.
Yeah, it's the building of an artificial god is kind of is what that's working towards.
Sure, okay, I get that. I think that was kind of missing the point, but of the Dwemer.
Which also makes me think. I mean, if the Dwemer are going to worship anyone, it's going to be Hermaeus Mora. Just purely off their nature, and so is it possible that there is some? It's a huge reach. I appreciate it's a huge reach, but something Dwemer, something Hermaeus Mora, something Vorin Dagoth,
and wavy.
yeah.
Blah blah blah. Don't think about it too much. Blah blah blah.
It seems obvious that when they were designing all the stuff for Dagothur, Hermaeus Mora didn't even enter their mind.
No.
That I think. I mean, it's almost like, I don't want to call it a retcon kind of thing, but it's like, Mirak was designed in such a way that, oh yeah, we can make a couple parallels here. Let's do something similar to Dagoth, or maybe just because it's a villain trope, it could be something as simple as that. I mean, it's really hard to say, and there's not really any evidence that it was intended that way, but just by happenstance we can put it together that way, and that's, I don't know, that's what makes it more interesting in my opinion.
So I want to go back for a second. I would be remiss if I did not point out that the idea of a dead or dreaming god, or a god separated through dimensionality or whatever, reaching out to followers through dreams and causing strange and bizarre and horrible rituals, Also comes straight out of Lovecraft.
Oh
Yep.
yeah.
Bingo.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
And we're definitely getting some Cthulhu vibes.
Mhm.
And fun fact, when you really dig down into the meat of the Lovecraftian mythos, Cthulhu is a rebel against the Old One kings.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Ah.
Depending on there's varying accounts, but that one comes out of the Mountains of Madness, and I like that one a lot.
Mm-hmm. I just started reading Call of Cthulhu. I got to that point in my I got a big old hardbound thing of like the annotated H.P. Lovecraft, and I just got to Call of Cthulhu.
The leather-bound Necronomicon thing?
Oh no, it's not leatherbound. It's not that cool.
Okay.
Is it one of the Barnes and Noble ones? Because I know they do a lot of like hard. Because I think I've got the same one, kind of black with like purpley like planets and shit on the front.
Oh no, it's not purpley. I don't think. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really nice parallel to kind of bring, the idea of the rebel and king as part of Lovecraft. Does that mean that? Well, that almost feels like the Sharmat. Well, do you ever get a Sharmat without a Hortator? Because you can
good question.
if you are going to make the parallel of Mirak as a Hortator as a Sharmat, then one who unites the people, one who ends a civil war.
Well, the Sharmat also unites people. Like Mirak was uniting people, so was Dagoth. I mean, both of them unite people. The question is, why do they unite and how? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, the Hortator is bringing people together because they agree to be together. The Sharmat is bringing people together by taking over their brains and making them all as one. You know?
I'm not sure how far they
consciousness.
necessarily agree to be together in the case of the Skyrim Civil War. It's just because they've been ruffle-stomped by the other side.
No, but you can bring them together. You can not end the Civil War plotline and bring them together. Yeah.
Yeah, you can have the season unending. Just be the way it resolves.
I forgot about
inverted commas, or hits pause.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Everybody, put your shit down for a minute.
If we keep killing each other, the dragons will kill whoever's left. Stop it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and there's another Hermaeus Mora connection. This is I mean, it feels like we're getting circumstantial evidence is piling up, but and we can almost get a conviction, but not quite. You know?
It's
pretty good, man.
Yeah, like it's so close.
So I'll tell you what, one of the interesting things for me is the Hortator and Sharmat relationship feels enantiomorphic.
Yes.
But in enantiomorphic relationships, there's usually, a Hegelian dialectic, right? Where in Hegel, ideas create their opposites, right? And so where's the opposite in that relationship? So, it's pretty obvious in, say, Anu and Padme, it's stasis versus chaos or change or possibility, that type of thing. So where's the opposite idea? Where's the opposite philosophy between Hortator and Sharmat? Because I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, Hortator and Sharmat 1-on-1. If the two were ever to split places, would you ever know?
I think Cyclone is hitting on it. In Enslavement versus Freedom, I was about to go on the notion of we versus me, which is similar.
I like that.
Because the Dagoth was let's bring the blight and make everything a part of this corrupted stuff. And let's bring the houses and tribes together. I'm not sure what Mirak was doing that could be described as similar, but the slaves were certainly suborned to his will, and he was the one calling the shots.
To the point that all they did was quote him. Yeah,
exactly. So
all in those moments, all individuality was released, and it was just they were all projections of his will.
Yeah, you can almost make that argument as well for the Hortator, again with the can you tell the difference? Because of what it means to be on a wartime footing. Basically, there's whenever you have a war, there are things that will be sacrificed. You cannot have full freedom of the press. You cannot have totally free state broadcast in order for anything to go. Just to bring it into the current day, the outcry of Zelensky is taking over Ukrainian media. No, he's not. He's making a public service broadcast in the time of war. And so that is very, very different because of the nature of war and and so you can get the same kind of sense of if the Hortator is a war leader, which is one of the things he's called as, then you've also got that submission of the many to the one. But it's not. But it is that willing submission rather than an enslavement.
I'm with you. Yeah.
So it looks similar if you look at it in a particular way, but it's also a very different one. And I don't know if I ever got an idea that the Hortator was a temporary position, because the 36 Lessons uses the term the Hortator to refer to Nerevar specifically. So it's both title and person in a way.
Yeah. It's like, almost like Izmir.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, it did remind me a little bit of that. Yeah, of it being a title that becomes historically almost inseparable from the person it was attached to. Yeah. But it's still a title. In fact, if I recall correctly, up until Skyrim, we didn't really think about Izmir as a title, wasn't it?
No, we didn't.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
It was just a name.
Yeah, and to take a historical example, Caesar is another one.
Yeah.
Good point. Yep.
That it was a person. It was a person, and then thereafter it was a title.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think whether. Nerevarine is the closest we can get to that as such, but it's still an emphasis on the spirit of something rather than the person in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of swing this the other way, because we've been talking about Sharmat a lot, and it's always the Sharmat in the way of the king, whereas the Nerevarine is like the mini John, so to speak. It's kind of like John was so great, John will be reincarnated, so this is someone that's like John, sort of thing, in a way that Sharmat isn't. If I can make that difference, it feels possibly feels tied up with Nerevar personally in a way that Hortator isn't. In a way that I don't know whether you can make the same argument with the Sharmat and Dagothr. I mean, he's the only one explicitly tied to the title, but while I'm babbling, now I think about it, the 36 Lessons never uses the term Dagothr or Vorin Dagoth or anything like that. It's always the Sharmat, in the same way that Nerevar is virtually always the Hortator. So
True. Control F, Dagoth, no hits.
Yeah. So that just strikes me as, are we looking at the are the Hortator and Sharmat constructs of tribunal theology? I think we can definitely say yes at that point. Whether or not they're anything else, I think we were saying that the Sharmat certainly is.
Well, there was a question in chat about whether or not the Sharmat and Hortator relationship is always going to be an antiomorphic relationship. In other words, is there also going to be a third party, an observer? Are they going to be a rebel and a king? My argument would be not necessarily, because the Hortator and the Sharmat are supposed to represent two kings. two ruling kings, or two potential ruling kings, I should say, at the very least. But that doesn't always necessarily mean that there's going to be an observer. I suspect, in fact, I would probably say that it is almost there. You are almost always going to end up with an enantiomorphic relationship between the two of them. But that's for two reasons. First one is that this is Elder Scrolls, and it's just the way plots go. And secondly, the enantiomorphic structure is such an incredibly vague storytelling device that you can pretty much slap it on anything. So one's got to collapse away. But the idea here is that if for it to, like, I mean, depending on how strictly you want to apply the term enantiomorph, you can get some very serious constraints with the enantiomorphic relationship, and one of them is that the two opposing forces have to create a third, or a third, like, a condition or entity or something that can be considered to be separate from the two individuals. So this has a lot to do with the enantiomorphic relationship in terms of explaining reproduction. So the male and female opposites combine together to create a third entity, which is either the child or the family, depending on who you're talking about. And the same thing applies for enantiomorphs. But generally speaking, I think the majority of when fans talk about it, and including myself, when fans talk about the enantiomorph in Elder Scrolls, we tend to kind of hand wave over that last, constraint. I think it might help a little bit to start maybe being a little bit more picky about what we call an enantiomorph. I don't know if I would. I enjoy it.
Yeah,
I like slapping that shit on everything.
Because I'm just I don't necessarily agree that an enantiomorph has to involve a change.
Sure.
In the rebel.
Okay.
Because that sounded like what you were implying.
I can come up with a scenario in which that would not be the case, but I would frequently argue that both the king and the rebel have to be changed. That the king has to have whatever it is stolen from him, and that the rebel has to gain the thing that got stolen, and so therefore they switch roles. The king becomes the rebel, and vice versa.
Yeah, because there's, if you compare it to the hero's journey, when the hero comes back, they come back changed.
Exactly.
I'm not sure that is necessarily always the case with the enantiomorph. I did have a sudden realization with that. I pull faces a lot in this cast, but that if we think about who the observer was in the Hortator Sharmat relationship for the Last Dragonborn and Mirak, Hermaeus Mora feels like a very good candidate. Particularly because they're the one who says to the Dragonborn, "Go deal with this guy," if I remember correctly, or at least helps you overcome him. So the observer being the one who determines who is the rebel and who is the king, Hermaeus Mora feels like a reasonable candidate for the observer in that particular enantiomorph. It's been a long time since I played that quest, so I may be glossing over details.
Cyclone saying that wouldn't that be the skull, and I think so. It's so one of the theories that I roll around in my head every once in a while is that, the skull could be okay. So here's an idea: if you want to figure out who the skull are in the enantiomorphic relationship here, you can say that the skull are the observer. You could also say that the skull are the secret that's being, or the MacGuffin that's being fought over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. In which case, it being, the secrets that they're giving up or whatever, or something, is the thing that's being fought over, and that technically doesn't make them the mage. It doesn't disqualify them, really. I mean, I suppose the mage could be the thing that's being fought over, but all that's important is that the mage witnesses what's happening, and whatever it is. You could say that the in the typical thief versus king, stealing the princess from the castle, you could say that the princess is the witness because she's sitting there watching these two idiots fight over her.
Isn't Nur the observer and the thing being fought over? I mean, there's a precedent for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
A big precedent, like the only precedent.
Yeah. The one that made it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's because I remember that when we look at the various elements of the anti-morph, some people will stick a catalyst in there. And Nur was the catalyst in the original anti-morph. I'm not sure we necessarily have catalysts in every single one. I know that was I'm trying to think whether that was something that was part of the original formation in the Rebels Return piece in the Imperial Library piece that was the first one to kind of posit the enantiomorph as a thing.
It's been a while since I've read that. I have to look it up again. Yeah.
So this is the weird thing about Dragonborn and maybe about enantiomorphic relationships in general. I almost feel like they kind of morph until because the relationships keep changing, right? So, we're thinking about Mirak, the Dragonborn, etc., but earlier in the quest, Hermaeus Mora is a thief trying to steal the knowledge of the shaman who is the king, who is protecting the knowledge, right? The king is protecting the knowledge or the secret that's hidden in the tower. And the Dragonborn is the observer in that relationship. And it seems that the whole thing is filled with these kind of enantiomorphic relationships, but the players keep changing, and maybe that's because it's the whole one-on-one thing. Because then you have in the trinity of Dragonborn, Mirak, and Hermaeus Mora. I mean, that that one can be defined a few ways, but yeah. So that is a weird thing, is that with the one-on-one, they always are shifting and changing, and it's never completely clear. Maybe until the red moment where things are finally resolved, who is who.
When the waveform collapses and
exactly.
Yeah, and Drelian's made a fantastic point in chat that Hermaeus Mora doesn't really end up maimed in anything to do with the Dragonborn. Just to read it out, Mora gains the secrets that he was looking for. He gets rid of Mirak, who was starting to be a problem, and he gets the last Dragonborn as a new champion. Hermaeus Mora wins in the Dragonborn expansion in a way that a witness really shouldn't, I suppose.
Yeah.
Also, a thematic afterglow of Morrowind on the Dragonborn story on Solstheim. Some literal, some figurative. What do you mean by that, Owain? I'm curious. I want to see what you mean by a thematic afterglow. I mean, I suppose unless you're talking in a literary sense, where it creates this precedent, I guess, for player characters and how they operate with the antagonists of the world. I mean, is that kind of what you're driving at? I'm trying to. I may be overthinking it.
Okay. I also kind of wonder, just to veer back, what kind of driving at what a Sharmat actually is. There's a line that just sticks in my head from the 36 lessons, that is that there is no true symbolism in the center. The Sharmat will believe that there is. Is it trying? And I don't know. I can't remember precisely what the center would be in that situation. I mean, the center being the tower, being I, and so on. I think is possibly the closest we're going to get to that. But yep.
Yeah, because he like, I think what's being talked about there is the idea that Dagoth Ur is sitting at the center of whatever. And by true symbolism, what Vivek means by true symbolism is a symbolism that is 100% valid. In other words, not open to interpretation. This is in fact what the symbol means. And if you interpret it otherwise, then you're wrong. And it's and it's true, so it's not like it's up to argument. It's true in the sense of God is truth, that kind of like true, capital T true.
Yeah, I don't jive with that.
Yeah, well, neither does Vivek, which is the point. There is no true symbolism at the center. So intrinsically what Vivek is saying is that when Dagoth Earth thinks that he's the focus of reality, as people have said before, when Dagoth Earth is sending out the blight and bringing and infecting people and bringing them into the sixth house, what he's doing is he's sending himself out, and everybody is becoming part of the center, part of him. Because he thinks that he is truly the center, and that's what Vivek's arguing, is that Dagoth Earth is dangerous for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that he thinks that this whole story is about him. It's the whole people have said that I am all are we is misinterpreted by Dagoth Earth to be I am and all are I.
I am and all are me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that's what one of the things that makes him so dangerous is that he firmly believes that the world revolves around him, that reality revolves around him. And he thinks that he is the true symbolism. But
Yeah. I'm trying to think about quite how much that the opposite of that applies to the Nerevarine, and particularly to Nerevar, because in quite a few ways, Nerevar was the first council. The whole thing and the whole political construct of Resdain was based around the idea of the idea of Nerevar and Dumak's friendship. So it's still a very, very personal thing, but I'm not sure. Again, I've always interpreted the Nerevarine as being someone who does certain things rather than being a particular person. But
oh, really? So you didn't buy into the whole reincarnation thing?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. So I don't know how far that can be stretched, though, given that Nerevar and what Nerevar did was such a personal thing. There's not an awful lot of weight given to Nerevar's interaction with the Ashlanders, even by the Ashlanders themselves. It's just, yeah, he was a friend to the tribes. We don't really know what that really meant.
Yeah.
A whole heap, which is a pain, because
considering the way Morrowind went after those events, I don't know how much of a friend he could have been. Wasn't much of a friend.
Yeah, but that just gets into Vivek Golden Path territory, which we probably shouldn't go near.
Yeah. So I'm not suggesting that the Sharmat always has to deal with things like contacting people in dreams. But he didn't try to kill all of them, which makes him nicer than 99% of Chimer. Good point. Good point. One of the things that one thing that I think that we do have to rely on with the Sharmat and the Hortator, if you want to apply their terms to other characters in other stories or other Elder Scrolls games, is that they both have to be a uniting force of some kind. And that, the Sharmat can be considered to be a uniting force if they are trying to unite all of wherever under a single flag, or if they're trying to make everybody just do what they say and on threat of death, or whatever. All of those things are valid. But the Hortator in order for it to be for it to sort of match this relationship, the two sides have to be like both of them trying to bring people together in some way. The Last Dragonborn as a Hortator,
Ish.
well, here's the only problem that I have with that. The only problem that I have with it is that the Dragonborn, as part of the plot to resolve the conflict with the Sharmat, the Dragonborn does not have to unite people. All he has to do is find them.
That's the main departure that I noticed.
Yeah, there's
and there is the trick that I don't know. I mean, I played God Save Me. I played as a Stormcloak the first time I beat the game. Why I don't know, but
I was pissed at the Empire.
So it seemed normal. But at least in that one, when you get to the end and it's time for the killing blow on General Tullius, you're given the option to do it yourself, or you can let somebody else do it. So they give you the option to be the observer.
Yeah. I don't know. I just other than that, I've always kind of had a problem with applying the Hortator and Sharmat relationship to the Last Dragonborn and Mirak. I do agree that Mirak has a lot of parallels with Dagothur, but I don't think that you can call the Last Dragonborn a Hortator unless you're also considering things like the quests of reuniting the Mages Guild and etc., which are sure, that does happen, but it doesn't have to happen in the context of his relationship with Mirak.
So another angle I want to consider is Alduin as Sharmat.
Yes.
I mean
okay.
It's a pretty big diversion from
from uniting everybody. He's doing is he's destroying everybody.
I mean that is in a way uniting. He's going to unite everything into his mighty gullet.
Yeah, literally.
I mean, if you squint.
I feel like there's more of a yin-yang relationship between LDB and Alduin rather than LDB and Mirak. While Mirak, I think, fits the Sharmat better, I think the relationship between LDB and Alduin fits better. Just through that specific lens. Because I mean, I remember Evan Smith and I back in the day, we were playing around with the idea that Alduin is taking the Transkalpic Nord idea. If we remember that one, that the dragons are the Nords from the previous Kalpa who jumped over, and then it's just this kind of repeating game of leapfrog.
Which I like thematically.
It sounds fun. I don't know that I take it, as truth, but I mean, he and I were kind of bouncing around with that, and I said, well, what if Alduin is the Dragonborn from the previous Kalpa, who he defeated Alduin and then became Alduin once he flipped Kalpas. Coming along with the Nords, and a lot of the basis of this was Isgramor and his 500 or thereabouts companions.
Well, doesn't that suggest the possibility that Alduin had to be defeated in a different Kalpa? By definition, that means that the Kalpa wouldn't happen.
That's the Seven Fights is kind of hinting at that. The bit where you get the Nords and the Dragons flip is the 500 companions because they have the names expressed as draconic names at the end.
Ismir becomes Ismalifax.
Yeah.
The shield Jills are a thing in that piece. Like all of the Nords, I don't remember how many were listed in that, but they all came back with like equivalent Dovazul names.
Yeah.
And that was what was the ship even had a name that was a dragon name. I'd have to look it up, but I'm a lazy piece of shit, so I'm not going to.
Yeah, does his belt have a dragon name? Did Isgramor's belt have a dragon? I'm always worried about what happened to Isgramor's belt. That's all.
Yes, yes, it did.
It's a very important character.
It was an absolute map. On
Isgramor's belt, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I remember that was something he and I were playing around with. So the idea that you fighting Alduin is you fighting yourself from a previous Kalpa, and now the roles have been reversed, through whatever device needs to make that happen. But we were this has got to be maybe 6 years ago. We were screwing around with this idea.
I remember when you guys first brought it up. I love it.
Yeah, like it was really
It was good fun.
Cool to think about. But and again, I mean, it's not something I particularly think is true by any stretch, but
but
just
it's
kind of a fun idea.
Fun game.
Yeah, fun to knock around. Yeah. But I mean, that was as much as I had to contribute with the potential of Alduin being seen as a Sharmat.
Because that kind of makes me think whether the Sharmat and the Hortator are distinctly Chimeri or Dunmeri culture heroes in some way. Because are we looking at a universal pattern here, or are we just operating within a Morrowind Resdane cultural context when we're looking at these things?
That's a good point to make. And I mean, when we were talking about the skull earlier, I had a similar thought about that. That the skull, you could say that their approach to religion, while very different to the Tribunal Temple, like there are a lot of similarities. But you could also say that with any theological paradigm. There's always going to be similarities because it's all people doing it. But I mean, the idea of the Allmaker, as how does that relate to the Tribunal and some kind of trinity? I mean, if it's short, then we can get into Lorcan and the Shezarines, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I'm the rails are back over there. So
Well, I mean, skull theology is probably the furthest possible from my area of expertise. But do they have do they have anything like this? I want to say, like, do they have anything similar with like the bad man or not the bad man, the
greedy man.
The greedy man.
Thank you.
But I mean,
do they have avatars of the greedy man and those sorts of things that would imply that sort of relationship?
I remember the other, or Ald, which is mentioned in the Seven Fights, is the closest to that. I think there's the Allmaker and then the other, the Ald, or Alduin. What is it? What is it? Akatosh calls him Aspect Ald. It was heaven itself that shed you from me.
Yeah, that's the Akatosh, but yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know about avatars, because I mean the skull theology is really small compared to others, because there's such a small subset of the Nords. And I don't know if maybe it's a bit of cultural bleed that they kind of, just through proximity to the Dark Elves, they kind of assimilated some of these ideas over time, as we know happens in real life. But I mean, I do notice. I mean, they have a more animistic approach where everything has its spirit, and so there are the spirit stones that come back into relevance when we play through Dragonborn, because Mirok is trying to take control of all of them and build those shrines there. But I mean, it almost feels like, because the Dunmer have their ancestor worship. Their ancestors are, the spirits or whatever. Well, for the skull, the spirits are spirits of nature, which makes me think of maybe earth bones, also ancestors. I mean, there's some intertwining there, I think.
Particularly if you look at the Sijiks, because you have the how do these forces work? Oh, they're the spirits of our ancestors and stuff from the Old Forces. Ways book. Yeah,
interesting that it is the 11 forces, which is an inelegant number.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we're kind of chasing our tails here a little bit.
I mean, I I do think that the Hortator and Sharmat are myth echoes of the original Enantiomorph.
Sure.
And that all that and that Elder Scrolls, both thematically and in terms of plot, is going through repetitive echoes of this primal relationship. Now, whether that's a good thing or not is a whole other thing, because it is a bit limiting in terms of theme and plot. There's some things you can't necessarily fit into that structure. And so I think that the Hortator and Sharmat are distinctly chimeric interpretations of that primal enantiomorph.
Oh, okay.
Which makes a lot of sense, because the Chimer have a habit of, I guess, polarizing things.
Yeah,
very much so.
They're very extremist.
Because what wasn't it the Chimer that said, oh yeah, the Aedra might be your ancestor, but the Daedra are our bigger, better ancestors.
Yeah, the new and improved
they,
Blackjack and Hookers versions.
And something I thought of earlier that, I mean, it's not necessarily relevant at this very moment, but I was thinking about the relationship between Hortator, Sharmat, and Taoism. And the yin and yang, and how you need one for the other, and there are holes in both where the other can fit. Like, that's thinking about it in an East Asian philosophy sort of way is interesting. Especially given that it seems to me that in TES, all the elven races have a lot more of an Asian sort of aesthetic to them. I mean, you go into Mournhold and we find, really neat, almost Japanese looking architecture. Lots of a focus on like cherry blossoms. Go to Aradon and you get these cherry blossoms. Which, I mean, cherry blossoms aren't necessarily Japanese in and of themselves, but that is the connection that we make. I know we've got cherry blossoms here in my town that were gifted to us from Japan, but
that's cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can find cherry blossoms all over here, just because they've just kind of spread. But I'm rambling.
Well,
blame the caffeine.
Oh, yeah. I was actually going to say that I was actually thinking in my head that like the dark elf motif in D&D and other related properties, including ESO and Mournhold and etc., is sort of Orientalist, It's sort of the Japanese are exotic, Asian people are exotic, and these are exotic elves.
I mean, maybe not the Drow.
That's where I'm coming from.
I don't get a whole lot of an Asian influence from them. I get more Amazonian.
It's not necessarily what I think. I think Chris is getting at is that Orientalism isn't necessarily about the East. Yeah. It's that this thing is foreign, and therefore exoticism is a good way.
Exactly. Exoticism. Yeah, it's foreign to white people, and therefore this is what that looks like. Yeah. This is an artistic style that was generated way back in the 1800s when we were just when the air quotes Asian culture was first starting to migrate into the Western mindset, and we were discovering things like in East Indian and West Indian cultures, which for as far as we're concerned, same fucking thing, and we didn't differentiate, and because that happens a long way off, and we don't have first person accounts of what this shit actually is. So yeah.
So I do have a thought. So we're talking about, I had mentioned Hortator and Sharmat as expressions of the myth echoes of the primal and antiomorph. Mm-hmm. There's also, and Chris, you mentioned about how the Chimer tend to be very extremist. There's also this funny dynamic in especially Dunmer culture where they very comfortably embody extreme differences. Right, so kind of the classic example in the real Baron Zaya is that what's her husband's name? Oh, His name starts with S.
S. Yeah.
Yeah.
Symmachus.
I love that guy.
Symmachus,
He-
Symmachus?
Something like that. And he comes across as this very, virtuous and even chaste kind of guy.
He reminds me of Duke Leto Atreides.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
did.
Like, talk about myth echoes. So, and you've got this public, it's the whole persona shadow thing, right? Where you have this public face of the Dunmer are, they're this very, oh no, we're better than everybody. But when you just dig down a little bit, it's like total crazy orgy fest. Yes, I'm looking at you, Vivek.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was about to say.
I'm looking
Vivek's
at
ears
you,
are burning
Vivek.
somewhere. He's like,
Yeah.
He even put gustatory sensors in the pelvic portion
Yeah.
of
Exactly.
one of Silthacil's robots.
yeah.
It's very true. Disturbing but true. And they're really good. And that initially when I was playing Morrowind, I love that because I'm like, I can totally justify my Dunmer character being a member of both the Tribunal Temple and the Imperial Cult.
Yep.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
How does that and how does that play into the concept of Hortator and Sharmat?
Well, let me first begin by saying that one of the so I did some research back in the late 90s and early 2000s right when Scientology was starting to come more into like public eye and people were starting to like look very critically at the organization, and so I started doing a lot of reading about cults and indoctrination and so on, and one of the first indications that an organization is becoming somewhat cult-like is when they start giving people nonsense and telling them that it makes sense. And so they start telling them things that are clearly blatantly wrong, and then insisting that that members of the cult believe that this is correct, and so they get and some of these can be incredibly crazy ideas, and one of the things that the Dunmer philosophy of like simultaneously believing two completely different things reminds me of that. And
Yeah.
one of the reasons why these it was a government document that I was reading, because this is back in the early days of the internet when people were like really excited that you could use the Freedom of Information Act to get government documents. And so people were like really excited and getting all these documents and sharing them around like this is actual FBI files about like how cults work. And it made you feel like you were reading something you weren't supposed to read, and it's in the fucking public library. but people were I remember reading this document that was talking about how that this is how you create a sense of unity and community is by getting people to believe these very difficult concepts. And it's one of the ways that you can show like a quality of membership is if a person is able to believe this absolutely ridiculous concept, then other cult members will look at that guy and say, wow, he's really advanced. He's like OT8, and he's got so few body thetans, it's ridiculous. And and so it was kind of So I mean that's just like the first like knee-jerk reaction I have whenever anybody mentions like the dichotomies in Dunmer culture. But when it comes to but that's what I was going to suggest is that I think the reason why the Dunmer have this, I think a reason why the Dunmer have this concept is there's two reasons I can think of. The first one is that it creates this sense of unity that the Dunmer, whether they know it or not, are kind of running a cult. And that this plays to the Dunmer vision of being oppressed by the Altmer and the Nords and literally anybody else, and that oppression, the fact that they're the underdogs, gives them justification to do things that are intrinsically abhorrent, like slavery and etc. From the to harness more of the Dungeons and Dragons feel, to use poisoned weapons and stab people in the back and etc. And the second reason is because their gods used to be mortals. And that's a tough that's a tough hump to get over. Like when you're trying to explain that, when you're trying to bring up your kids in Dunmer culture and your kids are asking all the stupid ass questions, you know, like, how did Jesus turn water into wine? It's a miracle. What does that mean? You know, it's like
Best questions.
Yeah, when they're asking all those questions, it's you want to sort of get them on board, and inevitably they're going to start asking questions like, well, if Vivek's a god now, but he wasn't a god back in before the Red Mountain exploded, and I don't understand why he's always been, but then he says he has parents. You that's what you want to encourage, is for those is for kids to sort of is for members of Dunmer culture, House Dunmer I should say, culture, to hold these two ideas, set completely disparate ideas in their head, and believe in both of them at the same time. And it, you know, like really loyal House Dunmer. Yeah, it's Chim. I ain't got to explain shit. And because Chim,
That's
honey.
What? Because Chim.
That's bullshit.
Is
What
the
the
answer
fuck?
to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually a
Do that
part
voice
of
more.
that's actually I can't remember the term for it in 1984. But that's but yeah, it's the idea of kind of holding those two contradictory ideas together at once.
Oh, what is that?
I know I used to know that. There is a term for it. I can't remember.
It's not a duck speaker because and it's not Newspeak, but it is something else.
It's related to Newspeak. Newspeak is what enables that process, but I can't remember what it's called. Yeah. Also, don't question the tribunal. Yeah, good old fashioned depression helps a lot too.
Yeah.
But what I thought Vivek used to be a human. Don't say that, kid. They will fucking murder you.
Yeah. Double think. Thank you. Thank you, Tor. We have the word.
There it is.
Yeah, because but the destruction of words is clearly happening with us. So yeah. Yeah. Although I have been slapped on the wrist recently for suggesting that the destruction of words is linked to thought and restriction thereof. But yeah.
Well, the words are ephemeral and they change, and the trick is to make sure that you are actually identifying the destruction of words and not the transformation of words, which is
the trick.
Well, I'm not saying that it's one or the other. I'm saying that we got to be careful to make sure that we don't accuse one of the other. But I mean, every generation has felt like the previous generation was dumber. And either they're right or they're wrong. I'd say because technology is getting better and better, I kind of think there's not a shift. Like, I'm not saying we're getting smarter because our technology is getting more advanced. I'm just saying I don't think we're getting dumber. I just think we're kind of like
more opportunities for us to demonstrate how dumb we were and all this.
Yes.
That's fair.
Right.
That's fair.
There is an actual cognitive shift that's happened. I mean, and this was several years ago, so it's probably gone even further now. But they had a shift for kind of they monitored kind of the shift is that pre-internet retention of information is so much better. However, in post-internet, you've got people who can find information and process on the fly much faster. That's already a shift that's happening in people's brains.
Which is important. I mean, I can't live without Microsoft OneNote anymore, because like my job revolves around my Microsoft OneNote, because everything that's happened to me in my career, I've logged in Microsoft OneNote. And so when people ask me a question like, you know, Chris, which is better? What should we be using for this API? REST or SOAP or GraphQL? I can go, and then 5 minutes later, I can come back with an article that explains exactly what it was. And I remember, like, in my head, because I have the notes and so on. So it's just like, it's kind of like saying that my entire career is one giant stack of notebooks, except I can actually find stuff in them. So, yeah. But yeah, try turning off my spell check. Fuck you. Are you stoned? I don't want to get fired. No, absolutely not. Your actual spelling ability will come back. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Spell check has ruined me. I used to be really good at spelling, and once spell check came up, I can't spell anything now.
Well, Owen's got a good point. If we turned off spell check and grammar checking and so on, we would regain that skill. I'm sure of it.
Yeah,
that's probably true. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, but point that I was vaguely thinking of, but the Sharmat almost seems to function at least in Tribunal Morrowind as a sort of a convenient other. I don't know whether I don't know whether the devil really has functioned this way in Christian theology in any meaningful sense, but the idea of the Sharmat coming back and messing with stuff is a threat that the Tribunal could waive quite well. And so you have I'm always wondering whether the Tribunal culture would have forgotten about the Hortator as part of that whole solution, because they're definitely not a Hortator. They're not the Nerevarine. So they're not the solution. So it's a bit weird that they kind of play up the Hortator as a thing, or not play up the Sharmat as a thing. Sorry, because they're not the way that the Sharmat gets solved.
Yeah. Jesus, Cat.
So
Drenian, you were asking about pet interruptions earlier. I think you got one.
There you go.
This is Trixie, who is a lore cat. I regularly send.
That's a lore butt right there.
Well, it's a lore butt right now, but I regularly send pictures of her to.
Oh, what's that? You're
one
sad.
chat.
Look at my butthole.
But no, she's the one who's like, everybody loves me. Because I'm so good.
Like an actual authentic British spit take. Wow, I've never seen that.
There you go.
I just shouldn't drink with you guys.
Yeah.
That's the basic takeaway here.
That's fantastic.
Wow, these people invented that chat. There you go.
Okay.
That's
That's great.
Yeah. It's a pleasure knowing you. So yeah, I like the idea of the Tribunal using the Sharmat as a sort of a scapegoat, a reason to do their terrible things. The history that Christianity has with the devil is vague and complicated.
Yes.
Ziegler, do you know anything in particular about where the concept arose historically?
A lot, actually. Oh yeah, actually quite a lot.
Let's go.
Boy, where to even start?
Say things.
Yeah, so the original conception of the devil was of the character Ha-Satan, or the Satan. Satan in Hebrew means accuser, and it's the idea of an accuser or a
adversary.
Yeah, adversary or prosecutor in a court setting, in a legal setting. So
Satan's a lawyer.
Satan's a lawyer, which makes
that
sense.
Makes so much
sense. Ergo, the movie Devil's Advocate, which is probably the most accurate depiction of Satan that we've ever seen.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's pretty darn good.
Well, it was Al Pacino. Like, you can't go wrong.
He's an absentee landlord.
I mean, come on. Anyway, so that's the original idea. So when Ha-Satan comes to God in the book of Job and says, "Hey, I'm going to bring an accusation," that's what's going on. It's a trial. It's a jurisprudence. It's a trial. And Job is on trial, or Job's faith is on trial, and ultimately it's a question of Job's faith and God's faithfulness, etc., etc. So that's kind of where it started, right? Ha-Satan's a member of the court; he's the prosecutor. Okay, all good. So eventually, the Israelites, or the people of Israel, etc., go into exile, and they go to Babylon, and they encounter other kinds of deities, and the idea is that they encountered Zoroastrianism, which Okay, right, which is definitely more dichotomistic, where you have an equal god and an equal devil-ish character, and that gets applied then to Hasatan. And then the point where we don't always see, and I only know about this because of my studies in demonology, is when they discovered. Yeah, we'll probably have a conversation about that later.
Yeah.
I just have a vision of Michael looking at like course guides and going, demonology. Check.
Yeah.
That sounds
If
fucking
only,
metal.
man.
I'm in there.
If oh my god, it's what sidebar. One of my biggest frustrations is that we do not have a good theology, one of evil, that's taught in our seminaries, and we do not have a good theology of demonology taught in our seminaries, and it deeply frustrates me.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a whole other subject. So anyway,
Nobody's teaching defense against the black arts anymore. That's the problem.
Exactly.
There's your Harry Potter for you bingo players.
Ever since that guy with the turban mysteriously vanished.
Yeah. But right, so when the Hebrews and the Jewish people encountered the Greeks, there was the idea of the daemon, Daemon, and in Greek culture, the daemon is just a spirit. It's like a helpful spirit, but they didn't see it that way. They saw them as demons, what the word became demon, and that they were emissaries of Hasatan.
Because they're helping other people. They're helping the not us.
They're helping
Is that
the not
where that
us.
goes from?
Yeah, and then there's issues of like, they're working against us. They're trying to corrupt us or accuse us. And so then by the time you get to Jesus, about the time of Jesus, then you have Satan as this not equal to God, but this adversarial destroyer, Abaddon figure, and the demons are his army. And there was even a first century group called the Essenes that kind of believed that there was going to be this apocalyptic war, and that they were training to be the soldiers of the light.
Oh, I thought I connected them to John the Baptist more than anything else. Oh, okay.
Yeah. John the Baptist apparently had some kind of some of the stuff he says is similar to some of the things they say.
Okay, cool.
What is it about early Christianity that smells so much of a doomsday cult?
Well,
really grim shit.
Have you read the history of the Middle East in that time?
Well, yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's bad enough that you've got the Romans, and everything that you think about the Romans. They specifically, we're talking about the Legion and the outlying kingdoms were horrible the way that they treated people.
Yeah.
If it was a well-known fact that if a woman is happened upon by Roman legionaries, it was guaranteed that she was raped. Absolutely guaranteed. And so that's a whole other thing. But so you've got this horrific, and they believe all kinds of horrible things, and it's here, James, the demon thing. They're causing our men to undergo surgery so that they don't look like that they're circumcised. So when they go to the bathhouses, they're not right. And so so you've got this demonic thing of Rome over top of everything, and how Rome is destroying everything that there is about what it means to be Jewish. You've got that, of course. Then you skip ahead a little bit to 70 AD, the razing of Jerusalem, and the just all of the horrific stuff. So it would feel like it. And then you got Nero, who burns Christians alive as torches as his dinner parties. That's a literal thing. He did that. He was very bad. I know. I should stop talking about this and start talking about fun stuff like Minecraft. Right?
Caligula was
Caligula, yeah.
And
so it does feel like a doomsday cult, because that's what was going on. And so when some people will debate about whenever Revelation was born, I favor an earlier writing. That's why it's this kind of like enormous destruction of everything, because that's what it felt like.
Yeah, they had oh, is it really okay? The back to the subject of Satan, the idea of things like hell and what we now consider to be like, eternal punishment, if I recall correctly, was something that was basically created over the early centuries in like almost sideshows, and this was sort of back when they were showing was it the Jesus the Garden of Earthly Delights?
They were probably showing Jesus, yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, they were showing Jesus, but they were showing they were literally traveling art shows that were showing illuminations to people, and and so the idea of hell as a place where people went to be punished after they died was was not something that was correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, please, but it was not something that came directly from Bible verse. It was something that...
Oh, man. I've got good stuff for you. I thank you for bringing this up. I love this stuff.
All right.
This is such great fun. So the original idea, hell was something that kind of developed kind of post. It's there in Jesus, because Jesus talks about hell in some of his and when the terms that he uses is Gehenna, which was the burning pit outside of Jerusalem. So he had this kind of, and that's a whole other thing, was he talking about purgation, and that's where purgatory comes from, etc., etc. But in Jewish conceptualism of the afterlife, you had what I can't remember, they called it Sheol.
Oh yeah.
But the Greeks called it
the
Hades,
pit.
The pit, and it's just kind of this dark, boring. The movie Eternals. No, anyway,
it's just miserable. Oh, like the Eternals.
I saw it last.
Fired.
Yay!
I saw it last time.
You're still
anyway.
better. Yeah.
I'm still bitter about it. There was anyway. Yeah, and so it's just kind of this meh type of place. And that was it. And that's where you go. And some of the dead may be lifted up to Abraham's bosom, or some which would later be called Paradiso. There's some funky stuff in certain biblical texts. This gets really weird. That there's a concept that Jesus, when he went to preach to the dead, which is a thing, lifted Sheol out of whatever metaphysical dimension it was in and placed it within Paradiso. And that's what we think of as heaven. Heaven is actually the throne of God, but the like Christian afterlife is Paradiso. Yeah, that one's a little funky.
I was going to say, I'll take this up with you after the cast.
Yeah, that one kind of deals with some things that are in Jude and some other places. That one's a little weird.
Yeah, and the whole where purgatory comes from, there's bits in Maccabees and all sorts.
Oh, no, no, but that's some people kind of take that route of it. But yes, absolutely, Maccabees, and there's a few other apocryphal sections that give us purgatory. But so hell as like a place of torment, it appears in some of Jesus's parables, but it becomes my thought, and I can't remember if anybody else, I'm sure other people have said this and I'm just repeating them, but I can't remember who it is that the image of hell comes from the book of Revelation, and it says there'll be a lake of fire and death, hell, and everything else will be thrown into it. And so
everything bad gets cast into the lake.
Exactly, and gets burned up, and depending on how you interpret this passage, everything like that is destroyed and exists no more. E.g., i.e., annihilationism. See C.S. Lewis's The Great Divorce, and that eventually kind of became the view of hell, but initially not so much. It was more Sheol. Which, I have to say, this raises, there's a whole fun question in Christian eschatology. When people die, do they enter into what, I can't remember the Greek, but do they enter into soul sleep and wait for the judgment, or are they transported through time because now you've exited out of time to the judgment, and that's why it seems that they're burning hell, because they're in the lake of fire?
Or do they physically rise out of the damn grave like a bunch of zombies?
See, this is what I'm talking about, man.
That's something different. That's
a different thing altogether.
The dead coming back was something else.
Isn't that something that happens in Revelation?
Yeah.
It also happens in the Gospels.
Yeah, and after Jesus comes back.
Yes, it's awesome.
Yeah, which is the whole kind of narrative for, I think, is it in Peter's letters somewhere that he talks about freeing the captives from hell? So I'm just kind of imagining Jesus going down, breaking everyone out of their cells, and just kind of leading a prison riot. To bring everyone back to the surface, sort of thing.
Yes, and that's so. Yeah, you can connect it to that. There's a whole thing about Christ kicking in the gates of hell and going in and freeing the people therein. For those of you who are interested in that, look at Gustav Aulain's Christus Victor. It's great. I love it. It's one of the theories of redemption. But there's also I want to say it's Luke, but don't quote me on that. In one of the Gospels, is it when Jesus? It's either when Jesus dies or when he's risen. Like dead saints rise from the dead and are walking around testifying.
It's somewhere in the synoptics, certainly.
It's in one of the synoptics.
Yeah.
There's so much cool stuff, man. And we're like, well, no, let's just condemn people for our sins. I'm like, dude, come on.
You could do better
There's
than
so
this.
much cool stuff.
No.
Come on.
So the reason why I'm leading us in this direction is because one of the other concepts for the Sharmat is the idea of like the relationship between or there's a relationship between the Sharmat and Satan.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And which then of course brings up the idea of who's supposed to be the Hortator, which one assumes it's Jesus. But this is this was a parallel that was brought up by somebody in the Elder Scrolls lore subreddit, I think. The idea of the devil versus the King of Kings and etc. I don't know. I wanted to kind of get Michael to talk about that a little bit because it's part of the devil's complicated.
Yes.
And so it's really kind of hard to slap the Sharmat and the Hortator onto these two intensely complicated religious concepts.
Yeah, there's things that work and there's a lot that doesn't.
There's a lot that doesn't. Yeah, exactly. And so that I'm not entirely sure how I would have come to that conclusion more organically instead of just saying it. So let's just say it. Yeah, it's tough to get that to work really closely, but yeah, it's sort of like trying to get the tribunal to work as the Holy Trinity. It really falls apart after a while.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
But beyond, hey, there's 3 of them.
Yeah.
Cyclone, I mean, honestly, the Trinity works better for Talos, sort of.
A little. It's still rugged. It's still rugged. Yeah.
It's
Yeah, Kirkbride took a lot from Hinduism, but it was he was pulling from so many different directions. Like if you could say that, like, you know, he took a lot from Hinduism in the same respect that like Thelema takes a lot from Hinduism. It's all over the place. But anyway, I think we should probably call it here. This is really good. I love these kind of discussions. I want to talk to Michael after the cast about doing a Bloodborne cast. Or series of casts, I suspect, because I've been digging back into now that Elden Ring is out, I've been digging back into Soulsborne lore, and it's just so fucking fabulous and so damn good.
God.
And I'm becoming a huge nerd of the way Miyazaki puts together world building. He's unbelievably good at it.
He's great. It's so good.
That's not Hayao Miyazaki, is it?
I can't remember his first name.
I don't think he's.
Because Hayao Miyazaki is the Studio Ghibli guy.
No.
Yeah.
No, Hidetaka.
Okay.
I know I'm mispronouncing that. I know.
What is it? Hidetaka? Yeah. Hidetaka. Yeah. Hidetaka. I suspect we might go on a tear for a while on Soulsborne lore. They are
obsessed with Bloodborne. Oh
yeah. I mean, they're really unbelievably good games, and the more I explore Bloodborne in particular, that game really like, considering there's only one of them, they packed a lot of content into that game and a lot of really amazing ideas, including some absolutely unbelievably horrifying concepts.
Oh my god, yes. Oh my god, yes. It's so good.
It's really something else. It's also one of those few games out there that you can find that actually has lore that dictates gameplay, and much more closely than you frequently get in Elder Scrolls games. Very, very good. Very good stuff. So yeah, I think we're going to go on a tear for that on that for a while. I don't know if we're going to do the rebranding first. The more honestly, guys, the more I think about the rebranding, the more freaked out I get, because it's a titanic amount of work. So we'll see. We might do it a little bit more half-assed to keep down the pressure.
Piece by piece.
So thanks everybody for watching. Please send any ideas that you have for casts or any questions you want answered. selectiveslorecast@gmail.com. Like and subscribe, etc., etc. Don't hurt. Is anybody working on anything right now that they want to mention? Any shout-outs? James, you got anything going with Written Uncertainty?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
I'm not launched yet. Kind of working on the last few bits before we can actually launch without getting horrifically behind schedule. But I'm working on a podcast for Exalted, a tabletop RPG.
Yes.
Which is a magnificently detailed setting, and there's just so much stuff in there to go through. In terms of the lore and quite how on earth you handle it when you're trying to put a game together, because this is a game where you start as a demigod who can be ruling a kingdom. That's the beginning point of power level.
Mm-hmm.
You can when you build a character, you can already smack a god around. So where on earth do you go with it in terms of development? So this is kind of a question that I and my co-host are trying to basically knock around with. Say, right, this is the lore of all the various stuff in Exalted, and this is how you make it into a game. Once we get past the kind of the initial concepts, it will eventually evolve into an actual atlas, as in talking about places and how they link into the setting and stuff.
Nice.
But that's a bit of a way off at the moment. We should hopefully be actually launching the thing, I think, early April at this point. But
it's not that far off. Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
No.
no, it's real close.
Yeah, we'll see. We've got 2 out of the 3 episodes that we wanted recorded at the start, recorded and edited and ready to go. Just got the last one to record, which will be sometime next week, hopefully, and then all of the editing. So yeah, I'm very, very excited about that. And just, yes, that apart from the Elder Scrolls, Exalted is one of the things I will just fanboy about and go, it's awesome, go play it. Don't bother with D&D. That D&D is just horribly limited as far as this is concerned relative to Exalted. Go and watch a whole load of wuxia, go and read Conan, go and read Gilgamesh, and you'll basically understand Exalted.
Okay.
In terms of what they're aiming
Nice.
at. And it's just a wonderful setting, and we're making a podcast about it. And sorry, I will stop squeeing. you can tell I'm getting wound up about the whole thing.
That's good though.
Yeah. But no, Wondrous Atlas of Creation's Destiny. I will be posting it wherever I am able when we do launch. But yes,
keep us aware. Anybody else got anything?
That is my new product.
No. All right. Great. Nope.
Busy being lazy. No, I'm being lazy. He's
okay. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Cool.
We'll see everybody later.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.